Hello sweet friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, I am so glad that you're here today, and if you are not new here, thank you for stopping by. We are doing a good old traditional March wrap-up today. I had a pretty good reading month overall. I read 9 books. One of those was nonfiction, and one of them was a book of poetry. The rest were all fiction, and I'm proud to say that a lot of these came from my library, so I don't have the physical copies, but I will be sure to put the covers right here so that you guys know what book I'm talking about as always. But without further ado, let's talk about books, besties. So the first book that I read in the month of March was a short little novella called Hoping for Hawthorne. This is the first in a series called the Bloom Sisters series. This was a super quick little audiobook from my library. I picked it up on a whim and it was so stinking cute. I'm always very impressed with authors that are able to build a believable and heartfelt romance that I'm rooting for in such a short amount of time. I think that the audiobook on like one-time speed was 4 hours. So I don't know what that equates to in pages, but very short. This one was definitely like the perfect little short quick listen. This is a bestie's older brother romance trope, which always gets me. I think that and like brother's best friend, those tropes are so stinking cute to me. But this one follows Avery and Hawthorne, and Avery is a super strong and fun character. She has had a crush on Avery ever since they were younger. She moved away from town whenever they were like in high school, and she has just returned back to this small town, and she actually runs into Hawthorne and all of his buddies at a local like bar and restaurant, and she is very quick to walk over and give him her thoughts. His buddies are kind of like giving the waitress a hard time and kind of hitting on her and like making lewd comments, and she overhears it and she goes over and she tells him, "Your mama raised you better than this, and you need to stop hanging out with some trash." It's pretty, I mean, I might be paraphrasing, but that's pretty much what she said. And she walks off, and he doesn't immediately realize who she is until the next day when she is invited back over to their house by their mother, who sees her in the grocery store, and they run into each other and it all comes back to him and the romance develops from there. But this is seriously absolutely adorable. I'm excited to continue on in the series. I think the second one is called A Date for Daisy, and yeah, I just really enjoyed this one. Highly recommend if you're looking for like a quick road trip listen, or if you're just wanting something that's going to be a really quick read. This is a really good one. Okay, next up is a book that I borrowed from the library, but man oh man do I need my own copy, and that is Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson. This is the second in the, I don't even know what the series would be called, but this is the follow-up to Everyone in My Family is a Murderer. In this one, you're still following Ernest Cunningham, and he has gotten great success with the book that he wrote in the first novel about his family, and he is invited, he is actually like nominated to be part of this super elite like writers guild type thing is how I understand it. And while they're traveling, all the authors that are nominated for this, I think there was 5 total, are all on the same train together, and one of them is murdered, and he finds himself right in the middle of it yet again. I absolutely love this one. You are not gonna like this one. If you didn't like the first one, you're not gonna like this one. If you don't like the fourth wall being broken, that's personally one of my favorite aspects about these books. But if you don't like that, you won't like this. But I obviously love both of those things. So I absolutely adored this one. I actually liked it even more than the first one, dare I say, and I really enjoyed the first one. The author's voice is so fun. They are super intriguing mysteries to try to solve as you read. One thing that I absolutely love about these books is that he's very intentional about using the classic mystery formula. So all of the rules that applied to golden age mystery novels, he applies them here. Things like the culprit won't have anything to do with supernatural things. the culprit is somebody that you know, that you are introduced to and is talked about in the story. Things like that. I really, really enjoy that. It's so reminiscent of like an Agatha. Absolutely adore it. So I gave this one 5 stars. I also really enjoyed, there was an aspect about this that I can't really talk about because it is a spoiler, but man, it really had me thinking. And we all know how much I love a book to make me really stop and think and dig. And this one had a concept in it that I was like, man, just kind of sent me down a rabbit hole. So highly recommend. Don't sleep on this one. Next up, I read Killer Instincts by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the second in the Naturals series. I absolutely adored it. This has been my favorite so far. Well, I mean, it's only the second, but I liked this one even more than I enjoyed the first one. This, without giving too much away about the series as a whole, this one follows another character in our cast of specially skilled teenagers who are part of this FBI program. Is it FBI or CIA? I think it's actually, no, it's FBI. The FBI program to catch serial killers. We follow in this one a story that hits very close to home for one of our other characters in this kind of cast of teenagers, found family elements, like just all the things. This is so heavy on found family, like friendship. And this one in particular, in my opinion, is so heavily about identity and like generationally where we get our identity from our parents and our parents' parents, and those themes were woven into this really, really well. The mystery was fantastic. I just absolutely love this cast of characters, and I love Jennifer Lynn Barnes' writing. I am now on like a mission to read all of her backlist. She has another series, I think it's called like Little White Lies is the first one. I'm already like on Pango trying to figure out, okay, where can I get this? I am just so excited to continue in this series. Next up, I finished the book of poetry, and this is Wildflower Pages by Brittany Litster. I always have to be super careful when I say that last name because it is very similar to my own, but this was a sweet, sweet coming back to YouTube gift from my bestie Lauren, and man, I am so glad she got it for me. I've been wanting it for a very long time, but I just haven't pulled the trigger and gotten it for myself. And man, I enjoyed so much of the poetry in here. And it has like little illustrations too of wildflowers all throughout. Just really beautiful watercolor paintings. And I just absolutely loved that aspect of it. I don't know if you can see that or not, but really, really enjoyed this. This is Christian poetry, and I've been really wanting to find more Christian poets that have published books like this and collect them and just start reading more poetry in general and kind of dipping my toe in. Emily Dickinson is my absolute favorite, and I do have quite a few of her poetry collections, but I would really like to start collecting some other poets and, like I said, in particular Christian poetry. So this was a very nice, very sweet addition to my collection. And then she actually has some other books that I'm wanting to order more of now that I know that I like her poetry. But there were so many in this that just spoke directly to my heart, directly to my soul. And yeah, this was fantastic. Highly recommend. Okay, next up, I finished Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings. I have an entire reading vlog dedicated to this. So if you want to know my full complete thoughts, and lordy, did I have a bunch of them, you can go and watch that vlog. But I really, really loved this one, and I appreciated so deeply the way that Jessa Hastings puts you in the characters' brains, hearts, souls, just everything about them you are enveloped into. This has elements of found family and, again, kind of identity and how you inherit that based on the family that you grow up in, how you navigate that as a new adult. This, of course, has a romance in it with Daisy and Christian, and I just absolutely adore Christian. And I already am loving the character growth that I'm seeing from Daisy, but this is a more hard-hitting romance. I mean, there's guns on the cover. So if that doesn't tell you it's a little bit more hard-hitting, then I don't know what will. But I just really enjoyed this. I am excited to continue on in the series and just to see how these characters develop, how they grow, how they heal, and how they navigate just their crazy, insane lives. Next up, we have Anna O by Matthew Blake. This is a book that I borrowed from the library, and I love this one. Recounting all these books back to back, I am realizing how good of a month I really did have in the month of March. But this is a mystery thriller that follows a guy who is a psychiatrist, and he has inherited a case of a woman, Anna O, who murdered 2 people in her sleep. And she suffers from a sleep disorder where she has actually been asleep since the night that she murdered these 2 people. I can't remember what the name of the disorder is, but it's a real thing. It's a real disorder that people have suffered from in the past. It is a self-preservation mode for their brain that is suffering from some sort of trauma. And when people have lost all hope, like their brains can go into this self-preservation mode where they stay asleep constantly. So she's breathing, she has brain activity, she is alive and well. She just is asleep. She's in a state of sleep, and it's time for her trial. So they need her to wake up, obviously. And he has inherited her case in order to get her to wake up. And in order to do that, he has to restore hope back to her. And so he goes on a journey to try to figure out who she is, and of course, like what happened that night. So he gets to know her mom and just her background, her parents, where she grew up, how she grew up, what happened that night, as far as he goes back to the place that it happened and kind of recounts her steps. He works very closely with the detective on the case, which actually happens to be his ex-wife. Yeah, I just really enjoyed this one. It took me by surprise. I learned a lot about sleep in this book, which I know it seems kind of random, but I really did. Like, I learned a lot about this disorder that I had never heard of before. I felt like the twists and the turns of it were really good. I don't want anyone going into this book though thinking that this is like a popcorn thriller. This book is not going to be a Frida McFadden by any means. It's not going to be one that has like crazy twists and turns every chapter. And I will say the author did a really good job of making the chapters short and kind of leaving them on a note where you wanted to know more. So it did kind of give it that feel of a popcorn thriller at times because it made it super bingeable and easy to read. But the tone of the novel is not your typical thriller, I don't feel like. It is more of a mystery. It is more of kind of a study. Again, not necessarily a character study like I feel Daisy Hates is, but just a little bit more of some depth to the thriller, if that makes sense. But I really enjoyed this one. I highly recommend if any of that sounds interesting to you. I just thoroughly enjoyed it. Okay, next up is another book that was in a vlog, so I won't spend too much time on it, but that is The Secret Poison Garden by Maureen Clovers. This is the first in the Rita Calabrese culinary mystery series, and I enjoyed this one so much I ended up giving it 4 stars. This follows a senior sleuth. Her name is Rita, and she is this sassy little 66-year-old Italian lady who is a wife and a mother of 3 grown children. And in this first mystery, she is ready for her second act, her second lease on life, you know? And she has become a reporter for the local newspaper. And she goes to the school to do an interview with a teacher there who has a poison garden. Everything in this garden is poisonous. So all of the herbs and all of the flowers can be used in some sort of way to poison someone. And she goes to interview this teacher, and the secret poison garden kind of comes up in conversation, and she shows her the garden, all of these things. Well, right after her article is published, the football coach ends up getting poisoned, and she feels partially responsible because nobody would have known about this poison garden had she not done the article and written it the way she did. Also, her son becomes a suspect through just a matter of events. So she is on the case and she's trying to figure out who did it, and I just absolutely loved it. The dynamics of this Italian family are just so fun, and watching Rita kind of really grow in her relationship with her 3 grown children is so beautiful. I absolutely loved it. She has the cutest relationship with her husband, this grumpy Italian dad. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I will say this does have a theme of sexual harassment in it that is a little bit more hard-hitting than what I typically find in cozies. So just know that going into it. It's not talked about super in depth, but it is definitely talked about and it's a big element of this story. So just know that. I really enjoyed this. Can't wait to continue on in the series. And yeah, I gave this 4 stars. Okay, and last but not least is the nonfiction book that I finished this month. And I was blessed enough to be a co-host with Keisha's Revive Christian Book Club this month. She does fiction and nonfiction. And this month she did nonfiction, and it was Love Walked Among Us by Paul E. Miller. I absolutely loved this book. I honestly loved it way more than I even anticipated loving it. It sparked such good discussion in our book discussion at the end of the month. So if you end up reading this, go back and watch that, because it filled my cup so much to talk about this book with these ladies that were my co-hosts, but also with all of you who participated. This book is all about the love of Jesus and how he walked that out in his daily life. Even though it was written in, I think, the late 90s or maybe early 2000s, this book was more relevant today than I think it probably was even back then. It is just so well written. He writes in a way that keeps you captivated, keeps you engaged and interested in the topic. He weaves so much scripture into it, which I just respect so highly. It is what I look for in nonfiction. Is your opinions are great, but I'm gonna need that scripture, you know? I'm gonna need that scripture to back it up. And I just really loved the way that he walked through the Gospels and facets of Jesus's love and how we can operate in that as Christians better and better, how we can look more and more like Christ. So I absolutely adored this one. Highly recommend if you're looking for a book on that topic. And yeah, so that is the conclusion of all the books that I read in March. Like I said, I had quite the good reading month and I'm very thankful for it. Please let me know down below what your favorite book of March was, or your least favorite. Maybe you didn't have a good month, so you can leave that too. Either way, just let me know what you were reading in March and what you're excited to read in April. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for being here. Bye.